Alright, let's do this. This is take 2 of the video, because the first time I recorded the video, I accidentally forgot to plug in my microphone. So I hope you don't mind the fact that I'm rehashing what I already hashed over when I was talking into the microphone for I literally talked in the microphone for 10 minutes before realizing that it wasn't plugged in. Oh, poor me. Poor me, poor me, poor me. So, right. I wanted to talk about schizophrenia and schizophrenia medication. So, as you all know, I do have schizophrenia, or technically it is schizoaffective mania, which means that I am a very rare diagnosis. So, I have bipolar, but without the depression. The thing is that states of mania are most often, or usually in 99% of the population, mania is followed by depression, which is then followed by mania and then depression over a period of 2 weeks. So you spend 2 weeks manic, and then maybe a month depressed, and then 2 weeks manic. Well, the thing is, thankfully, I never experienced depression. I've never been a depressed day in my life. Which is to say that I don't understand depression. I do understand that depression is something you can't escape from. But I don't have depression, which is kind of weird. I do have mania, though, which is something that is under control thanks to clozapine. I've seen a lot of interesting stuff up in my head, up in the realm. I didn't get to meet the gods and goddesses of ancient Egypt and ancient Greece and the Norse gods and goddesses. It was very interesting. I believe that with the right amount of psychedelic drugs, anyone else can see what I've seen. I don't encourage the use of psychedelic drugs because it's totally illegal to do that, because psychedelic drugs are still totally illegal. But, psychedelic drugs have been making headway in the treatment of mental disorders like depression. Did you know that mushrooms and DMT both contribute greatly to the cure of resilient depression? So people who have depression, who have been medicated by all these other medications, they take LSD or they take psilocybin or they take DMT, and pow, their depression is gone. So the theory, the neurological theory behind why psychedelics cure depression is because you have something called the default mode network. The default mode network is how your brain is wired. Your brain, when you're younger, when you're a kid, your brain is very plastic, very flexible. As you grow up, your brain sort of hardens into a state. That is called the default mode network. The default mode network is active whenever you're not doing anything with your body. Whenever you're sitting and thinking or just not doing anything, that's when the default mode network activates. And the thing is that by the time someone becomes an adult, their default mode network is generally very entrenched. And so what psychedelics do is they open up the default mode network to change. And that's the current theory. The current theory is that psychedelics sort of reset the brain's neurological growth patterns. And then with therapy, if you combine psychedelics with therapy, it is possible to rearrange the default mode network of the depressed or the PTSD person. And so here's the thing. I think PTSD works by, what happens when you get PTSD is your brain becomes so stressed in a certain portion that physiological changes are undergone inside your head. So if enough stress is applied to the human psyche, it can permanently alter the function of their brain. And the thing about psychedelic drugs is that these drugs re-energize the residual neural linkages. So so these neural linkages, they're entrenched. By the time you're 12, your default mode network and all the other parts of your brain are entrenched. That's why we can't learn languages past the age of 12, because our brain starts to harden. It's neurological. Although our brain never stops being plastic to some degree, it's just that our brains sort of stop changing so much and stop accepting so much change by the time we grow up. And the brain does stop developing at age 25. By the time you're 30, your mental ability starts to decline. But the thing is that psychedelics can reverse this. They can take your entrenched neurological signals and retrace them. So that's the theory, that psychedelics cause your brain to create new networks and causes parts of your brain that don't normally communicate with each other to communicate with each other. And that is the current neurological understanding of psychedelics. Now, my understanding of psychedelics is that they are a fuel that creates hyperconsciousness. So this is not based in any sort of neurological theory. I'm not educated enough to know exactly how that works. But I think that psychedelics prime the brain to communicate telepathically. And the thing is that the telepathic airwaves, the telepathic airwaves of our galaxy are extremely cluttered. Like you know how many radio stations there are. So taking psychedelics is like turning on a radio that catches 10 to 20 stations all at once. Some of them compressed, some of them not, some of them in a different language, some of them are TV signals, some of them are radio signals. And that's why they're so confusing, is because the psychic networks that permeate our Milky Way galaxy and other galaxies are so full, chock full of communications data and communications noise that when we take psychedelics, we experience this flood of communication. And it's like static. It's like communication static. Except in the psychedelic world, even the static is meaningful. And that's my understanding. I've actually never done psychedelic drugs before. I'd like to do them at some point in the future, but you know, it's against the law, and you know, I have schizophrenia, so it's probably wouldn't be a good move for me to, at the moment I'm at, or in the near future, it probably wouldn't be a very good idea for me to actually take. And also, here's the thing. I have absolutely no idea of how to get a hold of psychedelic drugs. I mean, I don't have a plug, you know, and I don't know how to find a plug. And I'm not good enough to grow my own mushrooms or to synthesize my own LSD, you know? And that stuff's illegal anyways. I don't want to do anything that's illegal simply because I don't want to go to jail. That's it. As simple as that. I believe that you really shouldn't go to jail for possessing psychedelic drugs. In fact, I believe you shouldn't go to jail for possessing any kind of substance. I believe that simple possession of a mind or body-altering substance should not be enough to send someone to jail. Now, there are some cases where I believe people should be punished for their handling of these drugs. For example, drug dealers the government should have, it's kind of funny. The only reason why most drugs are illegal is because they harm the people who use them. But the thing is that in order to stop these people from harming themselves, we harm them. In fact, we harm them arguably more than the drugs ever harmed them. Because a felony charge will stick with you for the rest of your life. It'll ruin your life. While you can get clean off of heroin and go back to a normal life, if you get arrested and go to jail for drug possession, you'll never work as a teacher. You'll never work in any job that can't employ felons, you know? But if you have a heroin addiction and when you're 22 and you kick it when you're 26, no one has to know. You'll be totally similar to anyone else who hadn't had a heroin addiction. You know, like you don't have to tell anybody. You have to disclose to an employer that you're a felon. You don't have to disclose to an employer that you struggled with a heroin addiction for several years, you know? And I think that's just stupid. It's stupid. It's absolutely bananas. It's bonkers that people lose years of their life because they were caught with a small amount of a substance whose only purpose is to make them feel good. It doesn't... That's why I believe that the war on drugs is probably one of the most ridiculously harmful decisions any government ever could have made. I mean, we learned this lesson in Prohibition in the 1920s. Do you know why the Prohibition Act, the 18th Amendment, I think it was the 18th Amendment, was repealed? Because when you outlaw a substance, it becomes a black market commodity. It causes violence. It gives resources to cartels. And the only reason why Al Capone was able to finance his huge crime empire was because of bootlegging, you know? The thing is that I think society can go on and can exist with the legalization, or at the very least the decriminalization of all substances. So any and all substance that is ingestible, that causes a reaction within someone, should be at the very least decriminalized. Now, I think that the proper ways, and we should do what Portugal is doing. Portugal is setting up, or has set up, drug treatment centers. So if you get caught with heroin, you don't go to jail. You go to a rehab facility, and you're weaned off of heroin. And when you're finally fit, because most of the time, drug use is a coping mechanism to cover up the traumas of the people who use the drugs. Now, I will admit some drugs are used just in order to have fun. Like, I'd say cocaine, you know? From what I can tell about the media and about stuff, I've never done cocaine. I've never seen anyone who has done cocaine. But it's like a party drug. You know, you take it to have fun. You don't take it to get rid of your demons. That's what heroin does, apparently. That's what I've heard. I don't know much about that, but like MDMA, you know, MDMA is supposed to be 100% safe as long as you don't use it more than once a month. Like, there have been studies that have shown that it is 100% physiologically safe to do ecstasy once a month. It doesn't cause any adverse effects in the body, you know? So why is it still Schedule 1? I have no idea. Doesn't make any sense. Makes no sense at all. You know, people have proven in papers, in scientific papers, that MDMA is a good treatment for PTSD and combat veterans. And people have proven that psilocybin is good for depression. Psilocybin can cure depression, like actually cure it instead of mitigate it. Because all current antidepressants do is mitigate depression. They don't cure depression. You have to constantly take the meds for the rest of your life if you don't want to be depressed. You know, but if you do mushrooms or ketamine, both of those have been proven to actively help against depression. You're gonna have a lasting impact. Now, I'm glad that psychedelics have been experiencing a renaissance in recent years. I'm very glad about that. I just want them to experience more of a renaissance. You know, I want it to be where I can go down to the corner store and buy some marijuana, and I can get LSD prescribed to me by a physician, you know, by a psychologist. I'd like it to be where these psychedelic drugs can be prescribed to people with conditions that can be helped by these psychedelic drugs by providers. Like, It's just people have been too hard on drugs. And the only reason why they have been hard on drugs is because these drugs alter your perception of the control structure. These drugs tend to break you from the current the zeitgeist. They're anti-zeitgeist. And governments are afraid of that. Governments are afraid that if too many people awaken to the nature of reality, and that reality doesn't need a tyrannical government who imprisons people like, and that's why psychedelics are illegal, or at the very least, that's why I believe psychedelics are illegal. Number one, because they promote free thinking, and even in America, free thinking is a finite resource. The government can only handle so much free thinking. Number two, psychedelics are scary. LSD has never killed anyone through pure toxicity. You can drink a bucket of LSD and you will not die from toxicity. However, if you take LSD and you're not prepared for it, you could suffer an extremely scary situation. And that's number two. That's the reason number two why I believe LSD and stuff like it is banned, is because of the adverse reactions that are triggered by the psychotic state. I believe that street use of LSD should be regulated. I don't say it should be crime. I don't think it should be criminalized. I think that the street use of LSD should be heavily regulated. However, I do believe that the usage of LSD or psilocybin or DMT or any of these psychedelic drugs in a clinical setting with clinical supervision should be a thing. It should be a thing. Clinical supervision, that's the main thing. Set and setting. Psychedelics are all about set and setting. So, I've never experienced anything like that before, but that's my caveat. I don't do drugs. In case you thought I was doing drugs, which I'm not. So, in the end, I believe that the United States. I think the United States has like a 5% of the world's population and 25% of the world's prison population, and the majority of those people in prison are minorities. And I'm like, and the only reason why there are so many people in prison is because of drugs, like the criminalization, the war on drugs. The war on drugs has destroyed a lot of lives, and a lot of people are unjustly hurt because of the war on drugs. Like it's not sustainable. Yeah. Ooh, I just burped. But if you don't agree with me, you don't have to agree with me on this. If you think drugs are bad and that drugs should be outlawed, whatever. As long as you don't. See, I am a social libertarian. I believe that people should be able to do to their bodies whatever they want to do to their bodies. And that people should be able to do whatever they want as long as it doesn't harm someone else. As long as it doesn't harm someone else. They can do whatever they want to themselves. Now, I don't know if this extends to suicide. I still have to think about whether or not I believe people should be able to commit suicide. At the moment, I'm kind of split on the matter. I believe that people should have freedom up until the point of ending their own lives, but at the same time, most people who are in the mood to end their own lives, they need help. They need help. They don't need to. The only reason why most of these people who are suicidal try to end their own lives is because they're escaping from a problem. And I believe that a lot more attention should be paid to the fact that should be paid to solving those problems. So I think people should be prevented from committing suicide. So if you know someone's going to commit suicide or is trying to commit suicide, stop them and try and solve the problem that the reason why they're trying to commit suicide. Whether that be through antidepressants or whether that be through just love and attention and care. There's never a reason for people to commit suicide unless unless they're an assassin who just killed a president and bites their cyanide pill, or if you're a spy and you just got caught. Yeah, sure. I give you that one. If you're a spy and you just got caught by the bad guys, bite that pill. But other than that, suicide should not be condoned. And that's how I'll end this video. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.